Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Bolling. Welcome to Cashin In, our Cashin In crew this week. Wayne Rogers, Jonathan Hoenig, Michelle Fields, and Ebony K. Williams. Welcome, everybody, as lawmakers battle it out over this weekend over trying to rein in Obamacare and government spending. A new poll shows a record number of Americans, 60% to be exact, think Washington already has too much power. Michelle, let me guess, you agree with these people?
Absolutely. I mean, just look at what's going on. We have the NSA spying on every American. We have mayors telling us how much soda we can drink. Now we're seeing government take over health care. I think a lot of Americans believed Obama when he first came in and said that government was going to be the answer to all of our problems. And now we've got it. We tried it. And I think a lot of Americans are saying, no, we're not interested anymore.
Yeah, John, bigger and bigger and bigger. The federal budget looks like it's approaching $4 trillion.
Yes, and of course, Eric, I mean, government is so involved now in ideas and in practices in which it wasn't even 100 years ago. In fact, the whole concept of government has changed since this country's founded. I mean, the promise of America was that government was limited. It was responsible for one thing, that was protecting individual rights. But to Michelle's point now, we have government involved in deciding who can cut hair, what we eat, what we can drive, how to run our businesses, what companies get saved, what companies get bailed out, what companies get broken up in terms of antitrust. So today's America is virtually unrecognizable to where it was even 100 years ago, and government's size and scope is why. And
Ebony, I look at some of these federal outlays, and the one that really strikes me, the one that grows the fastest, the biggest, and the most often are the entitlement programs, the welfares, the food stamps, etc. Is it out of control? Do we need to rein that in a bit?
I do think we need to rein it in, Eric. I think when we talk about those programs, sure, there are people that are absolutely in need, and they do need some type of safety net. But the way that we're doing it, it's not effective. It's too much waste, and there absolutely is some fraud there. So I think there's some accountability within our government to do a better job with those programs.
Okay, Wayne, this is a layup for you. Federal government, too big, out of control. What say you?
Oh yes, yes. You know, this all started in the New Deal, and there's a 10th Amendment to the Constitution that says all of those rights, not specifically all of those things, not specifically mentioned in the Constitution, that are relegated to the federal government are relegated to the states and to the people. We have abandoned that. Obamacare is an example of that. I think if you go back and look at the Supreme Court decisions, Wickard versus Filburn, in which in 1942, where the federal government said that a guy who was growing grain on his own land for his own use was subject to the Interstate Commerce Clause because he was affecting the prices that were in effect at that time. So the Commerce Clause has been used to aggrandize more and more federal government getting into our business and doing whatever the heck they want to do. It's a terrible thing. Even Justice Roberts, when he imposed Obamacare on us by calling it a tax, nowhere is that in the law does it say it's a tax. He invented that.
I'm still looking for it. And I read this thing quite often. I'm still looking for it. Hey, John, in just 10 years ago, our federal budget, in 10 years, it's almost doubled. That's unsustainable.
Well, I mean, there's that belief now, Eric, that basically government can do whatever it wants as long as it can get the votes. We often hear about government being a democracy. It's actually not. It's a republic, and its purpose is to protect those individual rights. And to Wayne's point, we now have the absurdity of government not only forcing you into these bankrupt entitlement programs like Social Security, like Medicare, that we know make up the $100 trillion in unfunded liabilities in the country, but now Obamacare as well. And I think that's why a lot of Americans, in response to this poll, are scratching their heads and saying, is government limited or not? Because it sure doesn't look like it is based on what's going on in D.C.
I want our producers to roll a clip of President Obama before he's President Obama, before he's even elected. This is a couple of weeks before the election. He warned us that he wanted to change the direction of America. And a lot of us were scratching our head, yet he was elected anyway. Take a listen.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
Michelle, we did it anyway, didn't we?
Yes. Well, look, I think the problem is that once an entitlement program is created or a new government department, there's no way, there's no going back. It's there to stay. And I think that's why we're seeing this huge battle right now on Capitol Hill, because members of Congress know that once Obamacare's in, there's no way to take that away from the people. Entitlement programs are never scaled back. It only continues to grow bigger and bigger.
And Ebony, it's not just entitlement programs. It's not just Obamacare.
Right.
The NSA, they're snooping on America. Americans,
Yes.
government, Big Brother is so big, so out of control. It's a shell of what we used to be.
I think so, Eric. I think it's not a singular issue. When we talk about this poll and the numbers it reflects, some of this stuff we started seeing this number increase in government distrust in about 2004, which not coincidentally was around the time this NSA program really got off the ground, and we started seeing some kind of inconsistencies with the intelligence relied on going into Iraq. So I think that we're just seeing an upward trend of something that started a while back. Absolutely.
All right. Let me go to Wayne. Wayne, this show, Cashin In, myself, all of us, I guess included, have been characterized this way in some of the liberal media. Anarcho-capitalist, almost like capitalism is a bad thing.
No, Eric, it's astounding, isn't it? I mean, people have forgotten what made the country great, what the country was about, what we originally founded on, what the founding fathers. The people don't read the Constitution. You carry a copy of it, God bless you. But the people do not read the Constitution. They don't read the Federalist Papers. They don't understand what the basic part of the government was set up to protect us from our federal government. That was the reason that the founding fathers wrote the Constitution, not to use the federal government as an enhancer of something that everybody wanted, as somebody who pays out, like the divine right of kings. They understood that. That's why they wrote it.
Yeah. And Eric, I mean, just to bring it back to the bottom line, the most profitable, the most prosperous point of this country came before all these progressive type of programs, entitlements, minimum wage. I mean, the most prosperous period of this country came before any of those were enacted.
Right, and in fact, this document right here didn't include any of those programs when they wrote that, and we live by it. Anyway, all right, we're going to leave it there. Good discussion. Remember when the president promised this?
If somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them.
Well, now get this. The EPA just admitting its new proposed rule to basically shut down coal plants will do nothing to fight global warming. Meanwhile, thousands of jobs are expected to go up in smoke. Jonathan, I can't remember a time where an American president was hell-bent on destroying an American industry the way this president has done, is in the process of doing to the coal industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's bewildering, Eric. I mean, I've always said that environmental regulators' goal is to hurt mankind, and this story probably exemplifies it better than anything. I mean, coal violates no one's rights. Cutting these coal plants by the EPA's own admissions won't even affect CO2 levels, so why do it? Why impede this technological innovation energy, whether it's coal or the Keystone Pipeline, other than if your goal was to hurt humans and hurt mankind? Government should stay out of energy and actually let the free market determine whether it's coal, alternatives, or anything else, what's best for them to use.
You know, Wayne, there are about 175,000 jobs directly in the coal industry between mining and transportation. Forget the ancillary jobs around coal. He's literally taking this to those 200,000 people or so.
Well, Eric, the part that is so loony about all of this is that the EPA, whose job is to protect the environment, is saying that this has no effect. It's not going to add CO2 to the atmosphere. It's not going to do any of the things that it abhors to do. It says it's not going to do those things, and yet here it is passing a rule that says that, oh, well, you can't do it. Well, it's just dumb. It's dumb. It's the government. It's what we were talking about in the Yay block. These people just don't understand. The government doesn't understand one hand what the other one is doing. Of course, it's costing jobs.
Right. And Ebony, I remember the president saying, your electricity bills will necessarily skyrocket. Who does this help? What's the plan? What's the end game?
Yeah, there's a problem here, Eric. And to be clear, I believe global warming is a real issue, and this is something to be taken seriously. But there are a lot of people that don't believe in it, and it's because of stuff like this. This actually undermines the credibility of the EPA when they say out of their own mouth, it's actually really not going to affect the carbon emissions at all. So it's a bit problematic for them on the credibility front.
So
I do
what's
agree
the point?
with that.
What's the purpose? We're going to shut down the coal industry.
Right.
But
honestly, it does seem like they're just speaking rhetoric.
It's very, as everyone knows, everyone who's watching, there's smart people watching, you realize that even if we cut back coal emissions here, CO2 emissions here, China's still over-emitting. India is still over-emitting. Brazil is still over-emitting. At some point, you have to say, listen, they're not going to play by the rules. Why do we have to ruin an industry just to pick up the slack where they're slacking?
But Eric, isn't honestly the coal industry going to take care of itself? Because natural gas is so much cheaper. So I say hands off deck when it comes to this issue, and let it regulate itself.
Excuse me. I think the point here is that the EPA itself says that this isn't going to do any harm. That's what's dumb about it. Forget about it. You can have a debate about whether you want global warming or not. That isn't the question here. The question is the EPA.
Let me get Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
Eric, ever since Obama came into office, 138 coal plants have shut down, and it's estimated that 207 more will shut down by the end of this, within the decade. And the reason why is because of EPA regulations. So what I don't understand, are all of these unemployed coal workers who are trying to feed their family just supposed to take comfort in the fact that their jobs were killed for a regulation that doesn't even work, that there's no point to it? Where are they supposed to go? They're going to go work at Solyndra?
Right, we're going to have to leave it there. And we keep an eye on a lot of these stock prices. Some of the big coal companies, Arch Coal, Peabody Coal, James River, down 71%, down 25%, down 85% in their stock prices. This man is destroying a full industry. She's taking taxpayer cash with her. The IRS official at the center of the targeting conservative scandal, just retiring from the agency, and reports say she's walking away with a full pension with lucrative health benefits and a lot of money. This after she refused to tell taxpayers what really happened. So, Michelle, she got between 40 and 60-something grand a year, and I think a lot of benefits. Is this fair?
Not at all. And she's been on paid leave for months now. Now she's going to get tons of benefits. What this is telling all federal workers is that they can abuse their power. They can refuse to answer questions. And not only will they be able to just retire and have a nice, quiet life, but it'll be paid for by the very same people they were targeting. It's completely unfair. It sets a bad precedent.
Okay, Wayne, you trust them? You trust the IRS? You trust these people?
Of course not, Eric. You can't trust anybody in the government. Listen, here's a woman called before to testify, to tell the truth. She won't even talk. I mean, this is insanity. She should be compelled to talk. She should have been compelled to tell the truth. She should have been compelled to do these things. Otherwise, you fire her, you don't give her, you don't reward her. It does send a bad message. Michelle is right.
All right, let me talk to the lawyer here. Does she deserve it, Ebony? Does she deserve this big pension?
Come on now, Eric. At the end of the day, it's time to pull out that Constitution of yours, which I like a lot, by the way. And Wayne, it's time for the Fifth Amendment here, right? I mean, come on, guys. You can't have it both ways. There's a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, and that's what she's invoking. And we can be frustrated by it. I admit it. It's not cool. And Derek Issa has made it clear. We're going to get some answers about this thing one way or the other. But the woman's owed her pension. I mean.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree with Ebony.
I agree with you to take the Fifth. You have that right. Absolutely. But boy, Jonathan, I think we should be leaning on her to explain how high in government did that directive to target conservatives go?
Well, Eric, even without Lerner, I mean, the real problem remains, and that is the IRS. An IRS which is basically unrestrained with totally subjective, arbitrary rules that are haphazardly enforced. So rather than come down on Lois Lerner, who, to my knowledge, hasn't been actually convicted in a crime, why not take this opportunity to change the system, to move towards a moral tax system that is a flat tax system that actually treats everyone the same and leaves, totally eliminates the possibility of this type of subjective enforcement, which is what Lerner and so many else have been.
You and I, Jonathan, you and I love that. Wayne, I'm not sure. Do you like the flat tax as well? I love the idea of a flat tax.
Yes, I do. I like the flat tax. And by the way, I think she has every right to invoke the Fifth Amendment. I'm not talking about that. There are people around her who could testify to what she did or didn't do. Call those people up. That's what she should do.
Very quickly, Michelle, I want to clarify. I like the fair tax better than I like the flat tax. Go ahead.
I like the fair tax, but look, I think the woman, she's lying, and they ought to get some of the people in there to talk about what she did, because I do think that this came from the top. It's not a bunch of low-level employees who did this.
All right, Ebony, maybe it's time to just ask her to testify. Ask her nicely, maybe.
Right. I think her counsel will advise against that, for the record. But at the end of the day, you know, I agree. I agree with John on this. Let somebody else testify against her.
Very good. We're going to have to leave it there. Great show, everyone. Thank you very, very much.